Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk about Black History Month. The month that is a celebration of my people, because I am a black man and everything. And it's about all our accomplishments, all the oppression that we have gone through over like centuries of living in like America and stuff like that. So I'm here today to talk to you about Flashpoint, Season 4, Episode 2, Good Cop. This episode came out in 2011. I've never talked about the Flashpoint television show before. I don't even think I've ever made like a hint towards it. One day I always planned on talking about it, but I need to rewatch the entire series because I've never seen the entire series, especially that of the first season. When I started watching this show, see, this is a Canadian show and it's set in Canada. So it's not an American show filmed in Canada, and it's not a Canadian show that depicts America. It's just a Canadian. And this is a special task force unit for Canada Police Department where they try to de-escalate a lot of situations. They have like snipers, this and that, and people who try to calm down and they try to talk to you so they don't have to shoot you and stuff. That's basically the premise of this show. And I've never really been a cop drama type person. I've seen a few, but it's never really been my thing. But the thing that made me interested when I started watching this on CBS that was aired in America was that the original Pink Power Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Amy Jo Johnson, was in the show. So I'm like, oh, I gotta watch this, you know what I'm saying? Because like I'm a huge Power Ranger fan. And I haven't seen her in nothing since Power Rangers. I know she's done other stuff, but I ain't never watched those shows. And so I started watching it, starting with like the 4th season. And I remember the 4th season ended on a cliffhanger, and I couldn't wait to see the 5th, but by that time, they stopped showing the show in America, and I didn't know why. See, at that time, I didn't know it was a Canadian show. I just assumed it was set in America, but then I didn't really pay attention to, like, the size of their arms. I'm like, oh, that's a Canadian flag. So, like, yeah. And so, like, they used to show reruns on this one channel, and I used to watch those, but like I said before, I've never seen the show in its entirety. It used to be on Hulu, now it's not. It used to be on Roku TV, now it's not. Now it's on Paramount Plus. I'm like, crap. Whenever all my Star Trek shows start up again, I'm gonna have to like really rush and try to watch all 5 seasons. Not that many episodes, about 13 to 10, so yeah, that'll be an interesting month. But anyway, this episode is going to trigger a lot of people. I decided to pick this episode because it's one of the first episodes of this show I've ever seen. Now, normally when I talk about like, you know, I review a show for Black History Month is either a show that depicts like a black person or like a family, something like that. Now, there are technically, and I say technically, 3 black actors in this show, but they're not really in this show. One thing I've noticed is that this show is predominantly white. And like, you know, the cast is predominantly white, and they've had Leah appear a recurring role in season 2 and 3. She's black, but then she was absent for 4, and then she came back full time for season 5. Then there is Raph, who was shown halfway into season 4. And then by season 5, he's off the show because he shot somebody. And like I said before, this is a show that deals with cops that never really shoot anybody. They try to de-escalate the situation. So I find it kind of weird that they had this one opportunity for like a main cast member who's black, who shot somebody, and then he couldn't deal with shooting somebody, and he left the task force, writing him off very early just to bring back Leah. And then there is Winnie. I believe she's half black, and she just basically had a recurring role in season 1. But they say she's main for 2 to 5, but she's rarely in the show. She's the dispatcher. So she never really had no episodes. I think she was in that one episode where a bunch of the cops got kidnapped. And that's the most I've ever seen of her. So they don't really do much with their black stars when they do have them and stuff, and they always get written out. Whereas the white cast members are there from the beginning of the show to the end of the show. And that's just North Hollywood for you. Here's the thing about Canada. No disrespect and everything, but they're no different than Americans. And North Hollywood is no different from Hollywood. They don't really cast that many people of color in their stuff, and a Canadian person is just as racist as an American person. They all came from the same place in Europe, and when they took over this land from like the Native American or the indigenous people, like I watched Anne with the E season 3, my God, the racism, and in season 2 of that show towards the blacks and indigenous people. And then I watched a documentary about like the racism over there in Canada, and my God, like if you think it's bad in America, it's just as bad as over there. And the thing is like, I remember I used to watch like R.L. Stein's Goosebumps, The Haunting Hour and stuff like that. And I've said this before, you would be lucky to see a black person in Goosebumps or The Haunting Hour. And it was American show filmed in Canada. They did not whatsoever try to cast like people of color in that show. And The Haunting Hour only had 2 main black characters in a 4-season show. And they only appeared in 1 episode each. And I'm just like, are you really kidding me? This is why in the Goosebumps 2024 series, Disney Plus, they added as much diversity as they could, because they realized, hey, we got a problem over here. So instead of like, reviewing an episode that had one of these black characters, I decided to review an episode that dealt with a black awareness problem. And that problem is that might trigger people. A white cop who shoots a black teenager and gets away with it. This predates the Black Lives Matter movement in America by at least a decade. And yes, over there, they got problems like that too. And this episode reminds you of the Rodney King thing that I believe happened, what was it, the 90s, I believe? And, the protests, and then, some protest turns to riots and stuff like that. So it's one of those type of episodes, and it's a very, very important episode. Now, I have some mixed feelings about this episode, especially after watching it many years ago. The ending does not set right with me. I don't like how they wrote the ending at all. And because of that, the ending just doesn't age well. But it's a very important episode, a very good episode, and a very emotional episode. And I commend this Canadian show for wanting to tackle this issue, because in America, this was a year prior to when Trayvon Martin was killed. And like I said before, this is like nearly a decade before the whole Black Lives Matter movement in America. I don't know what all goes on in Canada. I don't know if this is like, they heard a story in their news and they're like, all right, let's write a story about it or what. Because nowadays in modern television, especially around 2021 and 2022, you will always see black awareness like episodes just randomly pop up and like predominantly white television, because Black Lives Matter movement was like really strong around 2020, and you just constantly kept seeing these episodes pop up, and then after they would pop up, they would like disappear and never get like tackled again in that same show. But it happened across like American television. Even in the CW's Kung Fu television show, that is an all Asian cast, they had 1 black character, and they had like a protest that happened in the streets because of a cop killing a like black character, and and it was just like a lot of these shows, they don't handle the subject matter very well, and when it's a one and done type thing, you know exactly either what it's for. Either they are trying to give awareness to this subject matter, or because it's hot on the news, it's now hot in Hollywood. So like I said before, I commend this Canadian show for doing this back in 2011. Not sure why they decided to, but at least it mattered to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like I said before, I still hate that ending. The way they wrote that ending was just kind of like, oh, come on, man. Like, really? Like, you had to throw that crap in? Like, yeah, you just couldn't let us have our moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, you had to throw that in. And I'm just kind of like, ugh. So the episode starts off like they always do, where it's like you see the conflict from the third act and you don't know what's going on. Then it takes you all the way to the beginning. And we see the officers in their police station. We see Officer Ed. He's now back because at the ending of last season, I believe he was in a car accident. He just has a newborn baby with his wife and stuff like that. So he's back on the force. And they get their new assignment. They have to protect this one cop. There's a huge protest going out, and the cop in question is Officer Greenlee. Officer Greenlee is white. He served on the force for 20 years, and he was found not guilty of accidentally shooting a black teenager. And this outraged the public. Now, Officer Greenlee, throughout the entire series, is very stern, has like a grisly voice, and like he protests his innocence throughout the entire episode. He has kind of like this country hick sounding voice, and yes, they do have country people up there in Canada, and yes, they have cowboys and stuff like that. And he has kind of like this smug entitlement to his tone every time you see him. When the cops arrive, he got out of his suit and put on his police uniform. He said that he's been a cop for 20 years. His career is now tarnished, and he's gonna walk out this building what he is, and that is, a cop. And so, you don't really know how to feel about this character, because every time he speaks to somebody, he always sounds like a very entitled prick. But he confesses his innocence, that it was an accident and stuff, and he should not have to be punished. He's talked about how people don't look at him the same way no more. Whenever he will pull over somebody, he doesn't know that person has a weapon on them. It's going to take him out. He says that his son got beaten up at school, and him and his wife are starting to have problems and stuff. He keeps talking about how he suffered through all of this, but never once does he ever mention that, the grieving family and friends of that teenage boy that he killed is suffering as well. He's only thinking about himself, which is something we've seen so many times in white cops shooting black suspects and stuff. It's like we see this all the time. We see the entitlement. We see them profess their innocence. They talk about how they don't do nothing wrong, whether it's intentional or accidental and stuff like that, And it's you never really truly hear them always say they feel sorry for what happened. It's just them a pity party and stuff. And the ones that do say they sorry about what happened, some truly do mean it. And there's probably some who really just don't. Because you gotta remember, in the world we live in, you don't know who's a good cop, who is a bad cop. The problem is that they are real bad cops in this world, and it doesn't matter what race they are. And a lot of the white ones, even back in the olden days, they were part of white racist groups, hate groups and stuff like that. And you never knew which one was a part of it, because a lot of them was hidden about it. And so there is reason for why people get so adamant about if a white cop kills a person of color, because you don't really know why exactly they did it or why they shot that person to begin with. Because there are some, like I said before, that are bad, and there are some, a lot, that are really good. And that's what's really interesting about this episode, is that, it causes you to think. Because a lot of people just want to look one-sided at one viewpoint, but they realize there are other viewpoints as well. He keeps talking about how he was scared and how he just pulled the trigger. And I'll get more into that a little bit later when we get into like the third act. So he said no matter what, he's walking out of there in his uniform, and they say, you know, that's going to be bad because you're going to put us as targets, you as yourself as a target, and these protests might turn violent. And that's exactly what happens. The moment they go out to put him in the car, there are people just pissed, screaming at him. They got their protest signs. They're throwing food at the cops, and it actually hits them. And this is something cops have to go through in real life when stuff like this happens. And they have to keep their cool and composure, and some do, and some do not. So when two of the other cops are in the car, all of a sudden things turn bad. They bust open the window, they throw in a pipe bomb and everything like that. While all this is going on, they had to rush him back into the building because now it's not safe to bring him out. And now they have to determine like who brought this pipe bomb, and is this something more, because now this protest is starting to turn into a riot. And it's sad when real protest turns into riots as well. I hate when some people be all like, it's never a protest to begin with, all they do is loot and riot, and that's not how all the cases are. But the majority, people go there to protest. Sadly, you have some idiots that come in and they want to loot and riot. And I hate when they do that, because then they make the cause of why they're protesting look bad and everything. And it's even worse when you have like a celebrity, like that one military dude from Big Brother who wanted to go, I think it was the Trayvon Martin shooting or something like that. He went, no, it was somebody else. Because it wasn't Florida, it was another place somewhere in the middle of America. And he went there talking about if he could survive the protests and the riots and everything. I can't stand that guy. And then there's one of those Paul brothers who went to one of the protests, and him and his friends were caught looting out of a store. And it's like, dude, you're a freaking millionaire. You're a boxer, you own wrestling. Why are you in there stealing? And of course, he just got slapped on the wrist and everything like that. But then, of course, when people actually do go there to protest and they're getting beat by like cops and all this other crap, they don't get slaps on the wrist. And it really sucks because the rioters and the looters and stuff make it bad for the actual protesters. And then by that time, cops don't know who is who, so some of them just go like berserk. But a cop must always keep their composure. And so like, what is it? So in the midst of all this, we see a very unusual person with a book bag, and they have a bunch of like, you know, pins on the book bag. This person brings a gun to the protest and starts firing off shots. So now they know something's a little bit more serious than just a normal protest and stuff like that. Now, the person who got shot was a young high school boy by the name of Luke. And his father, I believe his father is a judge. I'm not really 100% sure. But his father and his mother are very adamant, and they want Officer Greenlee to be brought to justice. They're pissed that their son was taken, and they believe it was racially motivated. And they believe that the system is corrupt and everything like that, which we all know the system is corrupt. And when you have Greenlee, who wasn't even punished whatsoever for like his involvement in that boy's murder. And so like now the special force task, they have to realize like, you know, there's a potential threat here with the gun and the pipe bomb. And they say normally when one pipe bomb is brought in, there's normally more. So now they need to see who did this. So they start looking around, and Jules, who is played by Amy Jo Johnson, the Power Ranger lady, she goes undercover. So she's there amidst the protests, and she's standing next to like, you know, Luke's family and stuff like that. And then so she needs to get more information, and she can't really get it because there's too many people shouting on the streets. So she gets involved and starts shoving like a cop. So they arrest her and put her in one of those like unit cars and stuff. There she talks to like a lady. Now at this point in time, they believe they know who spearheaded this riot and stuff. He's a known rioter, and he goes to tons of protests in both America and like Canada. And normally riots like start whenever he comes there. He's like the leader of it and stuff. And so they're questioning him. He doesn't know anything about like a gun or nothing like that. So when Jules is talking to this one lady who knows the leader of like the rioters and stuff, she starts to tell him that like everything started to change once this one girl named Pip started talking to him. And Pip was all like, we have to get justice for Luke no matter like what it takes and stuff like that. So now they realize they have to go looking for this one girl. The one girl is the one that had the book bag and the gun. So while all this is going on, they lost Greenlee and they thought, okay, maybe he went to his car. Looking at some footage, he did go to his car, but not alone. There we see Pip with a gun forcing him into the car. Now, while they're driving and everything, she makes the dumb mistake of taking her eyes off him and he tries to fight for the gun. And she shoots him in the shoulder and tells him to keep on driving. So we don't know where she's taking him. While they now know the face of her and everything, and they find more information on her, they talk to Luke's mother. It turns out Pip is one of those, like, girls who just bop from place to place. They don't know much about her family. They don't know if she even has a home. It's been reported that, she panhandles on the street and she just like, squats on people and stuff like that. But Luke took a shining to her and everything and wanted to help her with her education. And there, those two became like best friends. And I think they had a loving relationship as well, but it never went that far, them explaining. So he was helping her out with like a project. And then, so like next thing you know, when she found out Luke was murdered, she literally had a nervous breakdown because she loved him so much. Now, Pip is played by that of Eve Hallow, and I've seen her in a lot of stuff from like the 100. She's going to be in the 4th season of Star Trek Discovery. She's been in Heroes Reborn, that spin-off thing. She's been in a lot of stuff. She's a Canadian actress. The Haunting Hour, stuff like that. And so her and the father of Luke, they started talking and started getting angry and everything. Started talking about how this is like injustice and they need justice for Luke and this and that. And Julian Christopher, he plays the father, and may he rest in peace. I've seen that man in a couple of stuff. He was the police guard in the 3rd X-Men movie where he was talking to Mystique. And so apparently, from what the father said, they immigrated to Canada because they wanted a better life for their family and their son. They speak with an accent. And they thought Canada would be a better place until they saw just how racist Canada can be and stuff. And so after talking to like the mom, they realized that the father's not there. He's at a greenhouse where his son was murdered. And they believe that's where Pip is going to like, take him. And these cops aren't like no joke. They have a trained sniper, this and that. Because when they were talking to that rioter guy, they are like, look, man, tell us as much information on this girl as you can, because we're going to take her out. And our sniper over here, he never ever misses, and he can hit her from like many like yards away and stuff. And so they don't play around, which is why in this show, like, they always try to de-escalate the situation. And so we see the confrontation at the greenhouse. We see Pip, we see Greenlee, and we see the father. And Pip is all like, it's time to finally get like, justice for like Luke. And the father's like, what are you doing? Why you got that gun? Because he wasn't not a part of that, but she wants real revenge. She is extremely pissed off. And so the cops show up. And so by this time, the father takes the gun, and now he's had enough. And he's all like, he's not going to let this murderer get away from killing his son. And so Ed, who finally came back to the force, he tries to de-escalate the situation. And he talks to that of like all three of them. And he tells Greenlee, it's time for you to finally confess about what really happened that night. Because he told, I think, Ed and stuff like that. Oh, no. He didn't tell Ed. What it is that, like, Greenlee finally just wanted to confess. He wanted to explain exactly what happened. And this is the part I cannot stand in the show. And to this part, it just has not aged very well. And so Greenlee said, there was like 3 black guys and they shot up like a neighbor's place. And so he was following them. And he thought, Luke was one of them. And the dad's all like, oh, so you think all black people look the same? And he said, it's not like that. It's just your son matched the description of like one of the shooters and everything by the clothes he was wearing. So he went into the greenhouse and he saw Luke. And he pulled his gun on Luke, and Luke reached for something in his coat. And then that's when he shot Luke. And so, because he thought he was reaching for a gun, turns out he reached for a flower in his pocket, an orchid. And the significance of the orchid is because when Luke was helping Pip with her project for school, she needed orchids. So he went to the greenhouse to steal an orchid and get it for her. This makes her upset to where she grabs the gun and she's ready to kill Greenlee. The cops draw all their guns on her and they're ready to take her out until I think one of them talks to her and she just like breaks down and gives up the gun and they arrest her. Then we find out that Greenlee kept the orchid in his wallet this entire time to remind himself of the shooting he did last year. He tells them that like he was literally just afraid for his life when Luke reached for inside his pocket and stuff. He said it was dark. He didn't know what to expect. And like, he just got scared and pulled the trigger. So then, the father understood and, Pip is upset and they take like, Pip away and stuff like that. Then it ends with him at the police station and Ed talks to his wife and this and that. Now, this is why the ending, in my opinion, does not hold up well and pisses me off till today. Now, one thing people need to understand in situations like that, yes, cops do get scared when they approach like a suspect. Like no matter what, like they're just automatically on alert. Some are more scared than others. The problem is in society, they need to stop going for their gun. That's one of the first things for whatever reason they go for. But they have other weapons to not put lethal harm on people. They have mace, they have a police stick, and they have a taser. But for whatever reason, they're so quick to go for a gun. Now, anybody who's ever held a weapon in their hand or has ever heard a noise at night and went looking around the house, you're scared. And with that weapon in your hand, you strike first and you don't wait for nothing else. That is how people are. Weapons in a person's hand instills more fear, but it also instills bravery, but it instills more fear than it does bravery. You're only thinking about your life and your life only and not the other person. It's the same way if you go in like a dark alley and everything, and you have a pocket knife on you, your hand is going to be on that knife as you're walking through that alley or whatever. Your instinct is to harm them before they harm you. And that is a problem when it comes to cops always reaching for their gun first. Now, I understand why they reach for their gun and not say a police stick or this and that, because they don't know if a person has a weapon. This is why you're supposed to observe the situation. If there is no weapon in that person's hand, then there's no reason to really want to reach for your gun. Now, the problem is when people start reaching for things. When they tell you put your hands up in the air, you better do it. And even sometimes if you do that, you will still get hurt. In fact, there's more black people who get shot than any other race there is, whether they got their hands up in the air or not. And that is a huge problem in society. Now, the thing is like, law states that if you go reaching for something and that cop tells you like keep your hands where they can see them and don't reach for nothing, they have technically the right to shoot you and stuff like that. But what they do now is, because so many incidents happen where so many black people are getting shot, what a lot of cops do now is that they wait for you to pull out whatever it is you're going to pull out before they make that split decision to pull the trigger or not. And I know it's a risky scenario because they pull their weapon out really fast and shoot you, but that's a risk they're going to have to take, and they have bulletproof vests and everything. That's just a risk they're going to have to take. It's always best to wait until they actually see the weapon instead they start going like getting trigger happy and like pull the weapon or pull the trigger and everything. Now, something else. God, what is it? And, and I get why Luke was scared. A lot of people are just terrified of cops, and especially young black kids. They hear about how they get harassed by like cops. They hear how they get targeted and like profiled by them. And a lot of them, if they just see them, they just automatically bolt, even if they done nothing wrong. But there are some that have done things wrong and they run anyway because they either just don't want to get shot or they don't want to get arrested. And the problem with people like that, is that they cause other people who go off and run or get scared and try to pull out ID or something like that, or a cell phone, that they end up getting hurt and everything. Now, a cop is supposed to tell you, do not reach for nothing and do not keep your hands in the place. I don't remember hearing the cops say that. And one of the reasons why is because when they reviewed the scene, they had him doing exposition, narration over the scene. So you don't really hear what's going on. And so because of that, you can't hear if the cop tells them keep your hands up in the air or not. If they did not, then the cop is in trouble and everything because they're supposed to give you that command, and if they don't, then that falls on them. The fact that that they made the cop keep the flower in his wallet to remind him of what he did, because he can't live with himself and his wife has now left him and everything at this point in the episode, is kind of like, really? You made the black kid an actual criminal? Like, this was supposed to be like an accidental shooting. They could have wrote it to where the kid was completely innocent and this cop got nervous and shot by mistake and everything. Not because he's racist and nothing like that, just because it was an actual accident. I wish they would have had it like that. But instead, now they tried to spin it like the black kid was the actual criminal, which now he is because he stole from a place. And I'm just like, why in the world would you write that? And they try to write it in such a beautiful way with somber music. I'm all like, oh, this is so North Hollywood for you, man. This is so North Hollywood to write some bull crap like that. And the cops still got away with this accidental shooting. Now, the problem with that is cops need to be held responsible, whether it's on purpose or whether it's an accident, because a life has still been taken. When they get all gun happy and trigger happy and everything because fear sets in, they don't have to take a life. I remember there was that one incident where that lady thought she was reaching for her taser and she reached for her gun and shot the crap out of this one guy trying to drive off. And more cops need to be punished who do this crap, because when they get away with it, then the actual terrible cops who are racist think they can get away with it. So it was very bizarre on how this episode ended. But, like I said, I don't know how Canada law is, but nowadays in America, you see these cops, getting punished for, killing people, and no matter what race they are. Like those 3 black cops, I think was in Chicago, that stuff like that. It's like they need to be held accountable. So the ending has always pissed me off. Other than that, it was a really touching episode and a really emotional episode and a very educational episode until that disgusting ending. Oh, I forgot. You can also watch the first 3 seasons for free on Pluto TV. But if you want to watch all 5, then you gotta go to Paramount Plus. Happy Black History Month, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.